Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me. You know, there is a great book published in the end of the 90s that changed the world. And it does not matter whether you agree with the author or not about his premise. This book cracked open the concrete covering that revealed who Mary Magdalene is. And it began the conversation, it began the excitement. But this author went from selling around 20,000 books to selling millions and millions of books of this one book, The Da Vinci Code. And I think what happened was he tapped into a tremendous hunger because people could tell that the divine feminine had been suppressed, but they didn't know exactly why or what. And so this was a real reckoning when he presented this fictionalized story. Be it true or not, it's not the point, but it just sparked the imagination of people around the world and a hunger to know. And this hunger is driven from a right passion. And I will explain this in the fourth of our webinar series. So thank you for joining me. I appreciate this. So as we move forward here, sorry for the technical glitch here. Okay, get the slide to change. There we go. We're going to be diving into the Gospel of Mary Magdalene as we've been doing in our webinar series. Although this time we're actually going to review some of the material that happened in the second webinar. The third webinar was the story of her living demonstration that I did for the work of the Magdalene Moonrise Easter service. And so the theme for this time is really looking back. My experience with this material is that as simple as it is, and the few number of pages that we have, which is about 18 pages, there is packed a lot of experience in there, a lot of vibrational resonance that can be had to us if we just slow down for a minute and be willing to take a look at it again. So I will be covering some of the other concepts, but I'm going to be elaborating more on them, and I'm going to be going deeper into them to give you more experience. And then I also will bring in some new material and some new ideas as well. And then we will be on our way, because this is a 6-series webinar on the Gospel of Mary Magdalene as it's mirrored in A Course in Miracles. So we're going to begin with her meditation, which is called the Breath of Silence. And then I will be talking about some of the science behind her teachings that is outlined in A Gospel of Mary Magdalene, like good old quantum physics way back when, 2,000 years ago, in her gospel. And then the resurrected power of the anthropos state of being. Because this is what's new and exciting about what is in her body of work, is that we now have a person who has been pushed down and suppressed, who's now emerged, and there's been a lot of misunderstanding from my point of view, and a lot of this is my opinions and whatnot, so just take it with a grain of salt. If you resonate with it, great, and if you don't, just like, it's like, I read this wonderful book that says that many of these things are myths and legends. Some may be true or started out in truth. Who knows if they happened or not? We don't know. We can't really tell for sure. But the beauty of a myth is that sometimes there's more truth in a myth than there is in the reality itself. So because it embodies an archetypal understanding of our consciousness and our unconscious and our subconscious. So it it can take us really deep if we're willing to explore and look at it. So be patient as we go through this ride. This webinar is packed with a lot of information, and we're just going to be going a little deeper. So to prepare us for going deeper, and my last point was that we'll be talking about what the Urantia book, which is another channeled writing, says about the Magdalene, because we have so little information on these other texts and whatnot. I'm open to exploring wherever the information comes from, and I'll be explaining more about that later too. So we begin with her practice, and the way that we do her practice is, as I explained in the last one, is for those that listen will hear the breath of silence. And it's based on the George La Tor painting. And so I have my candle here. And as we take our candle and we focus on the light within, and we take a look at understanding in the metaphor that this artist was trying to paint was in these series of 3 paintings, was the step-by-step process through the symbols and the images in the painting. He was able to kind of show step-by-step how was she able to be able to get into. So let's see if I can hide this for a second. So that you can see that the first painting, she's feeling with passion. So she's very much in a seductive state of consciousness. She's very intent and focused on the light. And she has clear focus, allowing for the truth. And then she goes into her awakened consciousness and becomes her Christed self, and then becomes in what is the state of Nosis, or knowing, the anthropos state of consciousness. So let's see if we can begin. And I have Christine Tullis, who has beautiful music, and she often plays So if you remember from the last webinar, the first 6 pages were missing, but we were able to learn about the first 6 pages and the content of the first 6 pages by going to some of the channeled writings, and the resonance between what was shared there was quite accurate and quite, to me, very much in alignment with when we go to this page, or page 7, it now carries forward the ideas from page 6. So basically the question that's being put forth by the disciples is, what is matter? Will it last forever? And the teacher answered, all that is born and all that is created, all the elements of nature are woven and united with each other. So this is one of the elements, an atom. It's the fundamental building block of all matter. An adult human being is made up of around, I don't even know what this number is. It's trillions and trillions and trillions. You could try and figure it out. That would be great. But basically, molecules will break down into atoms. So the water molecule is hydrogen and oxygen, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. And it can morph and change in its molecular structure. And the atom breaks down into electrons, nucleus, part, and these electrons are orbiting around the nucleus. But basically, according to the scientists, it's about 99.9% empty space. So that's a lot of empty space, considering that it's matter, which we think of as being a hard, tangible substance that we can touch and feel. The smallest unit of matter is now understood to be the string theory, and it's composed of tiny vibrating strands of energy called strings, which is really interesting that they say it's vibrating. So when you look at this page again, what is matter? Will it last forever? The teacher answered, all that is born, all that is created, all the elements of nature, in other words, the water, the minerals, the atoms, electrons, the energy, are interwoven and united with each other, which is what the string theory is. String theory shows how there's this interweaving, these connecting, the way in which these vibrating strands hook up and connect. And the attractor of all of the interwoven and united with each other brings in the form of matter. So as these elements come together more and more and are united with each other, then they end up in this configuration of what we can touch and feel with our senses, taste, touch, feel. So this is just some artist renditions of how strings. So as we continue on, it says, all that is composed, the particle, shall decompose. Everything returns to its roots. Matter, which is particle, returns to the origin of matter, which is light or energy waves. So those who have ears to hear, let them hear. Of course, we hear with sound waves. So that it's already acknowledging what quantum physics has discovered is that particles matter returns to the origin of matter, which is light and energy waves. So there's this going back and forth between when things are a particle and then when they change and return to their roots and become light or energy waves. So we often will take like a piece of wood, and if we burn it, it then becomes light and energy waves and gives us energy, gives us heat. So those who have ears to hear, let them hear. And this is in something that was written close to 2,000 years ago. So the waves of the string, the vibrational waves when it's in the string, have also been documented that when you put a sound to them, the matter, the waves of the matter the waves become matter. So you have this sound. And science is proving that there is certain sounds, sacred sounds like Om, and the mandala that was created to show the shape of the sound in the form of matter. Actually, now through these tonoscope pictures, they can actually see the sound of Om, and it turns out to be the Sri Yanta mandala that is thousands of years old. So it's very exciting to me that the Gospel of Mary Magdalene has this component of science in it, and that it's acknowledging this, her teachings and her work and the power of who she is only just now really being understood and connected. And these women were not bimbos or just like because they didn't have a college education or something like that. These were sacred women, and they have deep esoteric knowledge and teachings and understandings about the universe and how the universe works. So as we go deeper into the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and also needing to look into the Gospel of Thomas, he goes on to talk about that there is no sin. And it is you that makes sin exist. When you act according to the habits of your corrupt nature, this is where sin lies. So we've been getting a lot of fake news that we are sinners. But it was like, it was trying to be implied that it was the core essence of who we were or who we are, is that we are original sin. We are like made of sin. And according to this teaching and the understanding, there is no sin, because the idea of sin is an idea of man. It's not an idea of God. And so when we do things that are not in alignment with the truth of our being, it corrupts who we are. And that's where sin lies. So who we are is love. And when we are doing something that is out of love or lacks love, this is where we get into problems and difficulties. And according to A Course in Miracles, we have only one problem at any given time, and it's the lack of love we're bringing to any situation. So when we learn that, and we just keep bringing more love, but where are we bringing the love? We're actually bringing the love to our corrupt nature. So this is the self-responsibility. That's why she's going within to discover who she is. So, let's see. This is why the good has come into your midst. It acts together with the elements of your nature, so as to reunite it with its roots. So there is guidance for us here. There is help for us. What she is basically talking about her experiences in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, of how she became fully human. You know, we think of ourselves, and a lot of women in particular feel like, I am less than, I'm not whole, I'm not complete, I'm missing, parts to myself, I'm not, I have low self-esteem or whatever it is. But the idea is that when you see an acorn, which is a seed, an acorn does not get planted and become a banana tree, because within the acorn is the blueprint for everything the acorn is. So we are the full embodiment of love, made in the image and likeness of God. Love is who we are. Love is what we are. We can't escape that. There's no denying it. It's like it doesn't have anything to do with what we think about it, because it is ultimately our nature. And so, but as we become awake to who and what we are, like she's showing us in this Gospel of Mary, her step-by-step process of how she became awake to who she was. And she took this journey with Jesus, which was quite extraordinary that she was able to do that. So she not only became a whole tree, fully enlightened being, she became fully rooted and grounded in the principles. And we are this anthropos as well, and we will grow into this. And it's not a possibility not to do it, because you can't not do what you already are. So but we can be in what they call an already state or a not yet there state. So when we're like seedlings, we're not there yet. And so, but the seedling still has everything about it, is a full blown oak tree. It's the complete blueprint for an oak tree. There's nothing missing. So we actually, at the same time, if we are in a seedling state or some level of growth that has sprouted us, it doesn't negate the fact that we already are the fully realized being of love. So we just have to continue the work if we so choose, because it's our choice. We're free, whether we want to awaken to this. And so what's really exciting to me about the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is she is really showing us by her example that we are love. So when we begin to explore and look even more deeper into the material, it says that then he continued, and this is why you become sick and why you die. For it is the result of your actions. What takes you further and further away? We move further and further away from the truth of who we are, and this makes us sick. When we move into love, love is inherently healthy. Love is inherently happy. It's just what love is. Love is, it has all these attributes, but it's interesting about that. Those attributes are things that as we've brought it into form, this experience, whatever we're creating, whatever experience we're creating in life, we give it these attributes. At the level of the divine mind and of God, it's attributeless. It just is love. There is nothing separate, nothing different. But unfortunately, according to A Course in Miracles, we got a tiny mad idea that we thought that we wanted to be separate. And so we did. We separated ourselves, and we call that the Big Bang Theory, which caused an explosion of the separation. And then what ended up happening was now we have this experience in this world of being separate and living in duality. So we can still, and we will be, because we're being guided, whether we think so or not, to keep moving towards the truth of who we are. And when we move away from the truth of who we are, we become sick. And then doesn't feel good. And so that kind of like gives us some motivation to go, well, how do I not be sick? What do I have to do to not be sick? And, for anyone who's watching this who is sick, just let you know that it's not a judgment that we're making about you, because no one can determine what were the errors of thinking or the errors of ways. And it could be a whole complex set of things that happen that cause the body to begin to break down from past lives, from present lives, and most of which is in the unconscious. And of course, the problem with the unconscious is it's unconscious to us. So, but what we can do is we can still keep choosing to move into wholeness and into our complete integrated, what she calls anthropos state of consciousness, where both the divine aspect of male and the divine aspect of female that exists within us resides. And so as we choose wholeness, as we begin to move towards wholeness, we get to have the effect or the experience of wholeness. So it's moves us into wholehearted oneness. And we see a shift now beginning to happen on the planet, because first we had mind, body, spirit, these separate parts. And now what's happening is it's all coming together into oneness. It's all coming together in a wholehearted way. But we must have the divine feminine to complete this integration, because you can't just have the patriarchy up here and the divine feminine barely seen, barely noticed, because it's an integral part of the wholeness. So when we want to have wholeness, which is ultimately wellness, which is ultimately perfect health, perfect abundance, all of that, then we must have the divine feminine, because we have a duality, male and female, night and day. And as we come together, we complete this integration and enter this state of consciousness that the Gospel of Mary Magdalene talks about, which is the consciousness of anthropos. So this was really powerfully said by Marianne Williamson in her famous speech that Nelson Mandela adopted from her book. And so it says, "It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous?" Well, right away, that's like, the ego's asking that question, right? Who are you to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? And then very softly, Marianne says, actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Fortunately, we've had a lot of conditioning from the patriarchy to not accept this part of ourselves. And the patriarchy was allowed to be revered as divine, but only the patriarchy. And then suddenly now, as we're moving into the 21st century, people are saying, we need to know ourselves as one. Oneness is where it's at. But for women and for myself, it's like we need a little space, we need a little time to, I mean, we just have recently the hashtag Me Too movement. We just have the confronting of our society of the harms that have been done by men to women that have made it very difficult for women to know the truth of who they are. And, you know, it's like one of the women was saying, you know, that who was suing one of the big well-known people who raped over 100 women and treated poorly. She said, give us a break. She said, we're just now, because people were saying, okay, let's move on now. And she's like, no, this is a healing process. And you know, we need some justice here. And yes, I know I need to forgive. And yes, I'm going to look at that and whatnot. But, you know, this is the time when we need to really understand that the divine feminine has to rise. She has to be seen for her divine self. And we're just now making it safe enough for her because people are starting to take seriously that you don't get to treat women like this. And if you do treat women like this in harmful ways, then there's going to be a consequence, because it's an error in thinking. It's a mistake what you're doing. And so to awaken as the one, the Christ and the Christ Sophia, of which is an equal partnership, we need to move into wholeness, but that's taking time. It's going to be an important thing for women to learn how to heal, and for men to learn how to heal, and also for mothers to raise children who are taught, and fathers, because most of these men that do this, many of them are fatherless men. So the responsibility of men to father children is very important. So an awakened woman who actually can achieve a sense of wholeness becomes very, very powerful. And a lot of people are intimidated and afraid of this power. And a lot of women don't want to even allow themselves to be seen as this powerful. So that's why I love the word wholeness, because can you accept wholeness in your life? Can you accept that you can move into a sense of wholeness? That would be lovely, wouldn't it? And when her manifestations come from this place of wholeness, they cannot be denied. As you can just see, the power of every chakra is open. She's fully in herself, present with her illuminated self. And this becomes her reality, what she wants. And we've seen examples of this. You know, there was a female pharaoh, and she basically just claimed, I am Pharaoh. When she saw the opportunity to do that, that's what she did. She just said, I am Pharaoh. And then through the brilliance of her leadership skills, Queen of Sheba was able to, and Queen Cleopatra, both of them were able to do extraordinary things in their time when women were not allowed to do things, to own land or to be rulers over kingdoms and things like this. So Hildegard Brigham is another mystic, Christian mystic, who also had achieved this extraordinary level. And we're going to review her teachings. Well, actually, we're reviewing Mary Magdalene's teaching in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene about how she shifts her reality. So as we continue through the book, it talks about attachment to matter. Gives rise to passion against nature. Thus, trouble arises in the whole body. And this is why I tell you, be in harmony. attachment to matter. So matter is being created and out of the wave, and then decomposes back into the light, and then is created out of the wave. And then we become attached to it, like this is mine. And as soon as we give rise to a passion for that attachment, it's against nature, the nature of the ebb and the flow, the matter formulation, and then the matter decomposing. And this is why I tell you, be in harmony. If you are out of balance, she suggests you take inspiration from manifestations of your true nature. For those who have ears to hear, let them hear. Now this line is repeated over and over throughout the Gospel of Mary Magdalene about, you have to hear, and you can hear the guidance from Spirit. But it's only for those who have ears, let them hear. So in other words, are you paying attention? Are you making yourself present so that you can hear? So we're going to look at her simple practice to returning to balance, because I've used it many times, and it's very simple, and I love it. It's a great way. So you look at an object, a person, or a landscape with love and without attachment, with no desire for appropriating of it. It just is to see it more clearly. It's kind of like how the American Indians felt like they were stewards of the land. Their job was to care for it, not to destroy it, rape it, pillage it, extract everything they want, make money off of it. And if they took care of the land provided to them. So this clearer seeing also allows the gifts to appear, and they are revealed to us. So the matter will then provide for us what it is that we need. So we are not created to possess matter. We are created to be with matter. So you have to take a breath, because especially in America, we have, and I am guilty of this too, we have a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of attachment to stuff. And so this practice of letting go and just being with your stuff and not feeling like you have to hang on to it is important. So this allows the good to come into your heart. You're not so attached to it. So with that, you're going to be able to share when it's needed or wanted. This is why I tell you, she says, be in harmony. Now that's a really simple statement, right? Be in harmony. But it's quite profound, because it's saying be, not I hope you do this, or would you do this, or consider doing this. It's just be in. That means this is happening to you, in you. Harmony. Harmony is the aspect of peace and love and joy. So when you are not in harmony, how do you get in harmony? You have to take inspiration from the manifestations. So inspiration meaning in spirit, in the action of spirit. You look at the manifestations. What have been your manifestations from your true nature? Where you are love. Everybody has had an experience of love. Everybody has had, it might have been just for a moment of peace, a moment of joy, happiness, all these aspects that are your true nature. So when you explore what is your true nature, those who have ears, let them hear. See, this is an incredible painting of her as an alchemist. So you're wanting to shift your reality, right? And move into a higher vibration, a higher frequency. So you do that through peace and love and joy. The fruits of the Spirit will take you there. There's a great line in A Course in Miracles, and it says, so what are these grievances for? And I was so struck when I read that, because I had a day when I was just in major grievance. And when I listened to it, all of a sudden I went, yeah, what are these grievances for? Because they certainly don't bring me peace. I don't get loved. In fact, if anything, when I've got a major grievance going on, people don't want to be near me. And joy is not what I'm going to get out of this holding on to the grievance. So I have to really take a look at this and see. So the formula is really beautifully quite simple. It's to take a breath. This breath gives you life. And then to remember a time when you felt happy. Remember a time. And if you can't remember a time, if you insist that there's never been a time when you enjoyed anything or you had any fun or whatever, you can still imagine, because you've seen movies, you've read books where people were explaining how it was to be happy. So imagination is not going to hurt it, it's going to help it. And then you feel. So you let yourself feel. So you remember a time when you felt peace, love, and joy. Then you feel the inspiration of that moment, that manifestation. Then you stay with the feeling of inspiration, because if I really remember something where I was just so happy, I was having so much fun, it was so great. It was one of the trips I went on was to Kauai. It was the valley where they filmed the King Kong movie, and I went with a group of friends. It was so extraordinarily beautiful. We were having so much fun hiking in the rainforest, and somebody was cooking this wonderful food for us, and it was so inspiring to be with like-minded people, to be with people that were coming from love and were so loving and caring. And so now that you feel that, and I'm just getting happy thinking about it, now you go forth with that inspiration. So you see, she was a woman who had access to sacred knowledge. And I think it was her cultivation and her ability to have this sacred knowledge that really made the difference. So how did she actually acquire this sacred knowledge? Well, I think we've talked a little bit about some of the teachings, but there's another dynamic which we talked about in the last webinar, but I want to just dive into a little bit more in detail. So she had a vision. They say without a vision, the people will perish. So she had a vision without seeing with the body's eyes. So that's pretty interesting. You have to be able to see with the body's eyes. And you think that that's how you vision, but actually you don't use your body's eyes when you vision. Because when you see with your body's eyes, as we talked about the last time, what happens is light comes in, it hits the back of the eyeball. It's turned into chemical electrical impulses that go up to the brain, and the brain searches to try to find, what does this mean? Am I safe here? Is it not safe? So there's all this evaluating and judging going on. And I had a really profound experience of this because my mother's husband had a stroke at the dinner table, and he didn't slump over or start drooling or anything. He just simply picked up a fork and he held it up with a curious look on his face, and he said, "What is this?" And that was because the part of his brain where a fork memory is of his experience was blocked. So he could not access that memory. So he was clueless about what the fork was for. So it is different to be able to see with the body's eyes. You can only basically see the past. So this painting is really a beautiful painting, and the golden wrap over her is referencing the light of the seeing the resurrected Christ. So she was able to, within her own internal structure, to be able to have this true seeing. And that's part of why she was able to see the resurrection. So this is another really interesting thing. They talk about what is the organ of true vision. The resurrection can be seen with neither with the eyes of the flesh nor with the eyes of the soul, the psyche. This vision is no hallucination, nor is it any fantasy linked to sensory, psychic, mental stimulation. The resurrection can be seen with neither with the eyes of flesh. So you see, it took her to be able to see it because she had actually learned about the instructions, but even her, she thought the man was the gardener that turned out to be Jesus. And so she was able to see him in his resurrected light body state. But it took a little bit for her to get to that place where she finally was able to see him as the Christ. So, not with the eyes of the soul. This vision is no hallucination, nor is it a fantasy linked to sensory, psychic, or mental stimulation. But the question is, what is the organ of true vision? So the organ is the divine mind. It is a vision of the Nosis, this divine mind. So she is often referred to as the woman who knew the all. And you'll see in this painting with her halo, her holy self, and the book of knowledge leaning against the Christ mind. So it is none other than the power of creative imagination. So the Gospel of Mary brings into a new understanding that was known about in the ancient world. The Nosis was seen as an angel of the soul, imaginal. And enlightened imagination is a powerful teaching in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, because when we see misery in the world, unhappiness, death, all these horrible things happening in the world, we're going to need to move into a vision and say yes to heaven on earth. And in order to do that, we have to stop seeing with our eyes, which can only evaluate and judge, based on our past experiences, what we're looking at. We have to move into a state of love, where we're extending love, sharing love, feeling our love, being willing to acknowledge and experience ourselves as holy. This is a component of it, is enlightened imagination, which is right-minded thinking. The Course in Miracles talks about being in the divine mind, in the right mind versus being in the split mind, the ego mind, which tells you things are not good. And so to make this switch, in nature we see it with the butterfly. There's what is called an imaginal cell that creates the butterfly. So the primordial soup, as the caterpillar dissolves, stimulates the imaginal cells that then begin to form the butterfly. So she comes to Jesus after having had this experience of understanding that she was one with God. So she had the experience of being able to vision, which is not seeing with the body's eyes, but another way that we might understand it is, seeing with the third eye. And she comes to Jesus and she says, "Oh my God, I see you now in this vision." And the Lord answered, "You are blessed, for the sight of me does not disturb you." The sight of you does not disturb you. Now, I've taken a number of courses from different teachers, and a lot of them don't understand why he says that the sight of him, which is, he's her beloved, right? She's been demonstrating and showing that nothing but love with him. So how come the sight of him doesn't disturb him? Because he, as he said in the Garden of Gethsemane, said, "The Father and I are one." So he understood what it would take to experience this oneness with this visioning process. And he taught it to her. He taught it to everybody. He taught it to the disciples, but they couldn't hear it. So she heard it, and she went and she did it. She did the work. And when she did the work, she got the results. And so she was so excited because suddenly she knew that she was one with God. And so when you look in the Course in Miracles, fast forward 2,000 years, for it is not his purpose to frighten you, but only yours. So it's the ego mind that creates fear. It's the ego is the thought of separation, that we think we're separate. And so because we hold this idea that we're separate and that somehow we should feel guilty about it, that this is not a good thing, that we're separate. Like, we don't know, is this person safe? Is there not safe? How do we move forward in the world? And so the ego creates fear. And of course, it's very clear that there's two basic choices, and there's all kinds of offshoots of that, but it's either fear or love. So love is letting go of fear. And when you begin to dismantle the fear, to see the ego for what it is, which is a thought in your mind that you're separate, then you can begin to let go of it. And we're going to have a wonderful class next month where we're going to talk about just how did she get past this ego, because the ego is pretty tricky. And so, but she figured out how to do it. So she was able to have her ascension into oneness and know that she was one. So the Course in Miracles goes on to talk about the ego has basically a ring of fear around us. And we're constantly wrapped in fear. Fearful things seem to be happening all the time, although I love that expression. Fear is false evidence appearing real. So they talk about it like a bank of low dark clouds that seem to be a solid wall before the sun. So it can make the sky really dark. But, you know, when you look at it, it's like an illusion. Because one of the things we learn is that it gives away softly to the mountaintops that rise above it. And it has no power at all to hold back anyone willing to climb to the top of the mountain and see the sun. The sun will be there. But, you know, in the meantime, we have this illusion that we're cut off from the sun. But if you try to touch it, that dark wall of clouds, it will disappear, because as you attempt to grasp it, there is like nothing to hold on to. It's just vapor, just air that we're breathing in, condensed with some water to make a cloud. So you will not bruise yourself, and when you travel through it, you can just move right on through the illusion. So we can move through the illusions, and we can affirm the truth of who we are. We can let your guide teach you. So this is really important. We're being guided. So the spirit is leading you past them. So very important to understand where the benefits them is a world of light, where they cast no shadow. So when we reach this place, you know, we'll be able to live in a world of light. And this circle of brightness is the real world, where your guilt is met with forgiveness. So it's an interesting practice that every time you see something that you feel guilty about, or that you find hard, just to say, I forgive this illusion that's in my life. I forgive this. And it's like a mantra. So here now comes the source of light, nothing perceived, forgiven, nor transformed, but merely known. So we start to move into this known awakened state, where we can actually experience heaven on earth. The joy and the fun and the laughter and the happiness. Because when Course says that we decided to have this crazy idea to separate, this tiny mad idea to separate, we forgot to laugh. And we made this world seem very real. And one by one, as people awaken, we'll be able to take a different direction. Because it is not we who make the path, it is we who give it direction. So we're moving through life, and we have to choose. So we're going to choose love or fear. And based on our choices, we'll have the experience of what is going to be the outpicturing of those thoughts. Because everything that you're seeing before you is the outpicturing of the thoughts in your mind. So, and we are vibration. So, as we learned from the string theory. And because we have this vibration, we can raise our vibration. And so when we raise our vibration, the fear that lives in our lives, that circles our lives, lies just below the level the body can see, and seems to be the whole foundation on which the world is based. So raising your vibration, taking the higher road, going to a higher frequency, is a very important thing. And I remember when Eve Ensler started the V-Day, Valentine's Day movement, where women who were abused would stand together and sing. They were singing a song that actually contained words of higher vibration about my worth, my value, my who I am is worthy and deserving of respect and love. And so that raised their vibration, and they're sharing it, which is the other critical piece that we have to share. The body cannot see this, for the body arose from this. So this is talking about this form of separation was a choice that we made as a collective mind that split off from God. So we want to be separate. We actually like being separate, and that's part of our struggle. You know, I have my house, and my house is set up the way I like it. I've got my things that I enjoy. I have it designed, colors, fabrics, everything, kind of bed is all the way I like it. And then I go to somebody else's house, it's totally different. And they have their house set up the way they like it. And like I went to this one woman's house, and everywhere your eye looks, you see beauty. She says, my house is an altar. And she has every single corner, every single, it is so delightful. But when I talked with another woman one time about how can you have a house that is like, you can open any drawer, anytime I go over there, open any closet, and everything is always in perfect right order. And she said, well, I don't go to bed until the house is perfectly put back together. So sometimes she's up till midnight trying to get her house in order, which is not something that I'm wanting to do. And it doesn't make them wrong or me wrong. It's just choices, right? We're all making choices. For its protection, which must always depend on keeping it not seen. So the ego is protecting this separation, is what it's saying here. And so if you stay unconscious to what you're doing, if you don't ask questions or open yourself up, become more open-minded, then you're not going to see what needs to shift. You're not going to see how to shift. You're not going to learn. So there's important to understand that. So there is no sin, right? For it is we who continually create sin with our sickly imagination. So we don't have to be doing this, but we've been so conditioned and trained for hundreds and thousands of years to not be well and not be whole. We don't love each other. We fight. So the motivation behind Mary Magdalene's imagination was her deep, undying devotion and love for the beloved. And she was so surrendered in service to him. So this was a tremendous motivation for her. And her creative imagination imbues all this with such a powerful presence that she can never leave it and nor lose it. So she has tremendous success with applying these principles, right? So that she became a powerful presence. We're witnessing that on the planet now with more and more people. Eckhart Tolle, for example, is someone who's talking about his experience of being a powerful presence. And I was just listening to him speak about visiting his father's his father's second wife, who is has mental illness, and she's paranoid a lot. And he would just go into deep, profound presence and just hold presence with her. And all the fear began to subside. And then there's a wonderful story in Hawaii about the psychiatrist who was running the state mental hospital for the criminally insane. And he did the same thing. he went into his mind and corrected the error of his thinking using forgiveness, which we call the Ho'oponopono practice. And suddenly he was able to see the outpicturing of the healing of people because of the work that he did within himself that created this wholeness returning to people. So this is what she did as well. She created the true beloved in her as her. She was able to discover it. And then the legend is that she lived out the remaining years of her life in the caves of La Sainte-Baume in south of France, where she was raised up by the angels and fed and lived in an exalted state of consciousness. So she became known as the woman who knew the all. So she was called the teacher of teachers because she had access to all knowledge, but it was the true knowledge, not the intellectual knowledge. It was the knowledge of what they call the Nosis. And we, unfortunately, have all been distracted. So we haven't been doing our practice to connect with the right-minded aspect, the divine mind of God. We've been distracted with what the ego wants. I want to be comfortable. I want to travel. I want this. I want a big fancy house, a big car. I want money in the bank. We've been seeking our beloved externally. We are looking for love in all the wrong places. And very much feeling like it's outside of ourselves. So we have to go get it. We have to eat it. We have to drink it. We have to smoke it. We have to, somehow. Oh my God. And then, of course, we've had on top of that, as is shown in the Gospel of Thomas, let Mary leave us, for women are not worthy of life. So we've had women as being second-class citizens, and we still do not have a right to sit on the council at the Vatican. The Pope is working on it, though. I just saw his movie, and he said, he says, I talk to men for advice. And then he goes, I talk to the women for advice about what they think about this or that issue that's going on. Oh my God, rich. He kept saying, oh, so much richer. He said, we need the women at the table. Societies and cultures that have 50% of the legislators are women have much healthier societies. Very powerful. When we are in wholeness and balance, being in harmony, these countries don't go to war with other countries. They're at peace. So the truth has really been suppressed. But it can't be suppressed entirely. They tried like crazy to suppress it. But there's been a lot of scholars out there that have been doing a lot of digging. And they've been able to find things and unearth things. And I'm going at the end of the year again to see Kathleen McGowan, who's done extraordinary research to try to find out about what's been suppressed, how it's been suppressed, and reveal it to people. But the other reason that you can't fully suppress everything is because all of us, our minds are connected to the minds of God because we're not separate from God. We are love. You have felt love, and every time you feel love, that is your connection to God. And your choice, if you want to feel it or not, you can shut it off, cut it down, block it, not forgive, all the things, but it doesn't change the fact. And so, as I shared this story from the last webinar, there I was sitting in meditation, and I just asked, what would you have me know? Ask my divine mind, my higher self, my God consciousness, what would you have me know? And I heard Magdalene underwater. So Magdalene underwater, what is that? I was like totally curious. I had no idea what it was. And it turned out it's the story, which I shared in the webinar number 2, the story of the Little Mermaid. So this white patriarchal father that looks just like the you know, just like the what do you call it, the God in the Sistine Chapel, is forbidding his daughter, who represents the divine feminine, and she has the red Magdalene hair, right? So he's forbidding her from exploring for the treasure. And there's the line in the course in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. It says, where there is the Nos, the divine mind, which is what divine mind means. It's the Nos, the knowing that is not the intellectual book knowing, but it's the knowing of the all, lies the treasure. So because it is held in the mind of God, the all, the Nosis, the divine Mary is called the woman who knew the all. So that means that we can have channeled writings. We can have psychics who can see and hear, and each of us can see and hear if we open ourselves to it. And so that we can learn. So Jesus was trying to teach his disciples, and they're like grumpy and complaining that, why is this woman allowed to be in our inner circle? We can't have this. And he says, you want her to be a male? And he says, okay, I will make her a male, resembling. So I myself shall lead her in order to make her male, so that she can too may become a living spirit resembling you males. I love the way he says that, you males. So it turns out it is her breath that, according to Jesus, makes her fully human. Because without the breath, there is no life. Our bodies can't live for 4 or 5 minutes without a breath. That's it. We have to have the breath. So it becomes really important for every woman who will make herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven. So what does he actually mean by this? It's like, so we have to make ourselves male, right? Well, how do we make ourselves male? And we talked about this last time as well, but I think this is good to remember, to take a deep breath in and to understand that we are equal as spirits. We breathe life. So we are the Shakti Shiva. I mean, the Hindus have known this for ages, right? It is the integration of the male and the female, that we stop identifying with the illusion that we're separate, and we become fully integrated, whole and complete. This is what is called the anthropos state of consciousness, which is basically in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene trying to show that we need to reach this place of consciousness in order to become enlightened. And that once we can fully integrate the duality into the non-duality and to know our oneness with God takes becoming completely integrated. We accept all parts of ourselves. And this is kind of the longing of the feminine to become part of being fully human. So this metaphor of the mermaid who's half woman and half fish, right? And so she wants to be whole. She wants to be a whole person, a whole. So during this work that I've been doing, studying the Magdalene, we had the Venus eclipse. And I was shown on my ordination this phrase from the Course in Miracles. It says, all separation vanishes as holiness is shared. For holiness is power, and by sharing it, it gains in strength. I've been in the spiritual world all my life, from the time I was 6 years old, when I was like trying to figure out who God was. And it wasn't until I got ordained as a priestess and really claimed my sacred self, my priestess self, that I experienced holy power. And it was so fun. It was so beautiful. I loved it. I had a ball. And by sharing it, it gains in strength. So I found it was getting stronger and stronger. And I knew that it was my work to do. So, this is why I love teaching this. And I'm hoping you're enjoying it as much as I am. That we are all one. And when we share our holiness, the sense of separation begins to vanish. For the wholeness completely integrates us. We're both male and female, inner and outer. It doesn't matter. And so we have a direct experience through wholeness of our oneness, which is, like, to me, much more doable. For those who have the ears, let them hear. Now, if you ask the ego about it, no way. You're going to be holy, forget it. See, that's why that beautiful passage from Marianne Williamson makes so much sense. That it's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens the ego. Because the ego is a thought of separation. And if you're no longer thinking about being separate and you're actually experiencing the truth of who you are, and you're in peace, you're in love, and you're extending and sharing your peace and your love, then there's no more ego. And that terrifies the ego. That's why Jesus said to Mary, oh my God, you made it to your oneness. You made it to your vision of knowing you're one with God, and it didn't even scare you, because we have to wake up very slowly and very gently because we're terrified of losing the ego. We think there's something to lose, and it's like that dark cloud. There's nothing there. It's like nothing. It's not anything. What is real is the peace. So after saying this, the Blessed One greeted them all, saying, peace be with you, and may my peace arise and be fulfilled within you. So when we look at the Course in Miracles, again, we talked a little about this last time too, that as you read the teachings of the apostles, remember, he's telling us that I told them myself that there was much that they would understand later, because they were not fully ready to follow me at the time. So they had a really hard time taking this information in, which can be understandable. They were, the number one. Women weren't even in power. They were second-class citizens unless a woman was totally tuned in to the truth of who she was, and then she could manifest. And her manifestation could not be denied her, because she was sourcing it from source and able to implement it through the correct, right use of her divine mind. But otherwise, if she was buying into the patriarchy, forget it. So where else can we find information about the divine feminine? That's through these different sources, because we don't have, a lot in this real world. In this world, it's not actually the real world, the ego world. And the Urantia book is a channel writing that has some things. It talks about Mother Spirit and Mary Magdalene. So there's some interesting things. Mother Spirit, close relationship to, like, Holy Spirit, Mother Spirit. In fact, the Pope even just said recently that the Holy Spirit is a woman. And so she customizes her connection to us, to each of us, helping us when we're ready to hear. And she will set out the light for all to see, so that you know, everyone's being called. No one's not being called, but not everyone answers. So there's angels in waiting, and you can call in your angels, help me. I'll call on mine right now, help me with this, finishing this up. And we look for deeper evidence of the truth. So the Urantia book, Who is Mother Spirit, says that she's the creative feminine aspect of creation. In spirit, form, Mother Creator. Some people call Sophia, Isis, Spirit of Truth, Holy Spirit. The foundational teachings of the Urantia book are that women are equal, and creates with us the masculine creative force which created us. So Mother Spirit, Christ is called Christ Michael. That's why my last name is Michaels, Christy Michaels. Christy is a name that means one who's aspiring to be like Christ, and Michaels, it has to do with the higher divine aspect of Michael and Mother Spirit. They work together as equals in what is called our local universe. And so Mother Spirit acts as the universe of focus and center of the Spirit of Truth, as well as known for her personal influence on the Holy Spirit. So even though we're talking about different attributes or different expressions, it's all this vibrational oneness ultimately, but it helps to understand it by speaking of it as these different functions. So in regards to Mary Magdalene, the Urantia book says that she was the most effective teacher of the gospel, which is what the gospel, which we actually have, the papyrus in existence here, and the papyrus that we have in existence shows us that it was because of Magdalene that we were able to have the apostles were able to go out, because they were scared after the crucifixion. They didn't want to move out, and it was her. We'll get to that at some point where we'll talk about what she said to them, which is, the grace will be among you. And she inspired that in them so that they felt filled with grace and knew the truth of the Spirit was with them. And so then they could go out into the world and spread the gospel. And the book ends with, according to Mary Magdalene, which of course you know I love. So the Urantia book says that Jesus did a really daring thing in his earth career. That the most amazing was his sudden announcement that he was setting aside this group of women to minister. And Mary Magdalene was the leader of the women's corps. So she had her own apostles that worked with her, and she led them. Said, but what exactly really made her the most effective teacher? Well, in the Bible, there's the story of Martha and Mary. And Jesus is really explaining to Martha, who's really pissed off that Mary's not going to help her in the kitchen. And he said, no, she's made the right choice. She's doing the right thing because, I am here. So make use of me while I'm here. And she is listening and understanding these teachings like nobody else. Nobody else really got it. And it was her coaching after his crucifixion that helped the other apostles kind of come into a fuller understanding so that they could go out and spread the gospel, because they were too afraid to move forward. And she invoked the presence of grace in all of them that helped them to be able to start the work. It also says that these women apostles were commissioned by Jesus. And just imagine if we knew who these women were. What if this was not suppressed? Wouldn't that be something? That they are actually named in the Urantia book. So you have Susanna and Joanna and Elizabeth and Martha and Rachel and Nasanta and Rebecca and Mary Magdalene. And then in the bottom row, you have Milcha, Ruth, Agaman, and Silta. And I know some of these women are known through other scholarly works and whatnot, who they are. But most of them have been lost. And their role and the work that they did went unacknowledged, unappreciated, which is really sad. You know, it's unfortunate because I'm sure they were incredible women. Especially in this time, from what we know about what the holy women did, they were not bimbos. They were really steeped in deep learning, and they did the spiritual work internally to make their own conscious connection. And that's why, you know, Mary Magdalene is so powerful and remains to be so powerful, because she is a living, vibrating demonstration that she can actually be called upon according to A Course in Miracles and the Manual for Teachers. And people have seen, you know, appearances of her. But the Gospel of Mary Magdalene actually gives us more specific details about her. She is a great demonstration as she addressed Peter with love and respect, even though he is, as Levi says, acting like a hothead. So isn't that amazing? Levi finally turns to him and says, listen, I thought we were supposed to follow Jesus. I thought we were going to, you know, that he was our master. We were going to follow him. And now you don't want Mary to be a part of our group and you want to kick her out of the inner circle. He says, you're just acting like a hothead. Very funny. And she just knew the truth. The truth was that she was loved, and that her purpose and function was to extend love and teach love. And so that's what she did, because Peter was like, let Mary leave us. Women are not worthy of life. Get her out of here. So she was quite the demonstration. And believe me, I have been up against men who are unkind and have no patience for women, think they're better than, all that kind of stuff. And it's not easy. It is not easy. And the Gospel of Mary Magdalene talks about her crying, you know, when Jesus is mean to her. So she's also showing her very human side, that she feels things. So in the Ranch book, paper 34 says that there are 7 spirits of God, like lamps burning before the throne, which the prophets saw in the symbols of vision: faithfulness, wisdom, devotion, understanding, compassion, purity, and sincerity. So these are like attributes of God. And God itself is attributeless. It's just love. And there is no duality in love. There is no separation in love. And so there can be no separate parts or separate aspects. It's just the oneness. And it was her ability to vision that really set her apart. That's what made her so powerful. And so the Gospel of Mary tells the story of her vision. And next month, we will go into what the vision was in more details about her ability and the steps that she took in her ascension process to hit that sweet spot where she knew she was one with God. But when Peter saw her after she had this vision, he was like, whoa. He's like, you know, really, he was like, let's see. Oh, sorry. So he could tell that something had happened. And so he says, sister, we know the teacher loved you differently from other women. And, you know, she really had embodied the knowledge of the Nosis. So she's often painted holding the Christ skull. She's reading the book, which women didn't do in those days. But it's usually just one book because it's not about studying or learning from many, many different books. It's just the one source of all knowledge. And so Peter knew there was something up. So he says, tell us whatever you remember of any words he told you, which we have not yet heard. He's trying to bust her. People think that he's being nice at this point, but he's not. He's just trying to get her to cough up the goods, so to speak, like what's going on here? Because he could tell there was something different. And, but he didn't understand it because he didn't have the eyes to see or the ears to hear, right? So he's pretty, and she says to him, I will now speak to you of that which has not been given to you to hear. So, well, he couldn't get it because he didn't know, right? And so she shares her vision. And that's what we're going to go into. But this is kind of just a brief overview of it. So there is this Nos that lies the treasure, right? And that is in the divine mind. And when I said to him, Lord, when someone meets you in a moment of vision, she reached God directly in her vision. It is through the soul or through the spirit. There's a question that she asked. And he answered her and said, he does not see through the soul nor the spirit, but the Nos, the divine mind, that is between the two, that this is what sees the vision, and it is that which makes us fully human, whole. So the Course in Miracles explains that we are one at the level of the divine mind. All the rest of it is illusion. So when you're looking at me, you're seeing an illusion. And so when we're at the level of divine mind, when we know, then all separation vanishes. But we have to be in our divine nature. We have to be sharing love, extending love, and then we will be able to have that. So that's what they accomplished between the two of them. That gave them this feeling of being equal. And so then you see what happened. She went forth and spread the gospel of Mary Magdalene. And then she lived out the remainders of her years just living in a state of pure ecstasy, where she just was one with God and just in her heart, loving and being blessed by this life. So next month, we're going to be making available the seminars that talk about the climates of ascension and how she was able to get past all the ego stuff, and how she was able to inspire the disciples to spread the gospel according to Mary. And if you're in the Bay Area at all, we do have events coming up. This is June 16th in 2018 in Petaluma. We have the Magdalene Feast Day coming up, which will be a circle of women devoted to Magdalene. We have the second Tuesday of the month is at Open Secret. This is the Way of Mary, which is the practice of these sacred meditations and chanting and claiming yourself as divine and sharing with Melissa Patterson. Sophia Patterson here is Melissa Sophia Joy Patterson is going to be channeling Magdalene. And so we usually hold a circle on the second Tuesday of the month. And then we have the Living Revelation in Petaluma. And all of this you can find on my website. Whatever the current event is, just go to my website, The Gospel of Mary Magdalene. magdalene.info, and you'll be able to find that. And save the date for the Magdalene feast day. If you can be in the area, that would be great. And this is one of my favorite paintings. Mary Mag, redefining the sensual, wealthy goddess. Telling the story about who she really is, right? Which is great. Thank you all for coming.